Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Hello and welcome to the programme, which this week comes to you from Dover. So the Brexit negotiations continue, and when Leave Day comes, this town will be on the front line. Many are worried about friction at the border between Dover and the EU. But what exactly is friction? Helen Catt reports.
Dover. It's the UK's closest border to continental Europe. We are currently in the EU. That means in terms of customs, crossing the channel is pretty much frictionless. At the moment, we don't know what a future trade deal with the EU will look like, or if there'll be any special deal at all. But the government has said it wants to keep trade as frictionless as possible.
So I'm going to find out exactly what we mean by friction.
Many countries outside the EU, like Norway and Canada, have very different deals which affects trade in different ways.
But for the sake of arguments, we're going to find out about the deal currently enjoyed by Switzerland.
As we know, Switzerland is outside the EU, so here's the plan. Switzerland is going to play the part of post-Brexit Britain. Basel is going to play the part of Dover. We're going to export some goods from post-Brexit Britain through Dover into the EU. Now, it's obviously not an exact analogy. For instance, Switzerland is outside the customs union, but inside the single market. Under current government plans, we'd be out of both.
But the question is, how much friction will we see?
Ciaran Donovan is a van driver. For more than 10 years, he's delivered goods over every border in Europe. He believes Brexit will be bad for Britain.
I know exactly what a mess it's going to be.
Joining Ciaran today is Dover-based businessman Peter Garstin. Peter was the chairman of the Dover People's Port Trust that tried to buy the port of Dover back in 2010. He believes that Brexit will be good for Britain.
I'm convinced that Brexit is the right thing for this country.
Peter and Ciaran meet up in Turbental, just outside Zurich. The item we're going to export is in this building.
Thank you.
Approval.
Perfect.
And your invoice.
Fantastic. So this is what we've come to get. It's an exhaust pipe for a car. This is the invoice. That's the first bit of our paper trail. And that, I think you can have that, Ciaran.
Thank you. Well, he's quite heavy.
Brilliant. Oh.
For a back box. Right. Pull it in the back, in the middle. In the middle? Yep. Right, off we go.
Well, so far, so frictionless. Or not quite. We did have to do a bit of paperwork before we could get this invoice.
To export this exhaust pipe, we had to employ a customs agent. It's their job to ensure that all the paperwork is correct and all the relevant fee and tariffs have been paid before we can cross the border into the EU.
And that's where we're off to now, ready to cross the border tomorrow with our load.
Ciaran is worried that Brexit will mean customs checks at Dover, not to mention the Channel Tunnel.
If the government came up with some harebrained plan to ease the excess trucks by clearing customs and using Dover as a clearance facility, right, you would actually fill up the entire port of Dover in 3 hours.
What's the solution to that, Peter?
It can be solved. It won't work with the current customs clearance systems without complete automation.
You can't automate customs because if you go back to the original argument...
You can't automate the search of vehicles, no, but you can automate the documentation. In the same way as, 20 years ago you had to have a paper airline ticket.
Oh no, some customs is already electronic.
Yeah.
For instance, if you go into Norway, it's already electronic, but the only electronic part of your customs is literally placing your transit document under a scanner and scan it upon entry. Yeah. You've still got to physically go into an agent to collect those papers in the first place.
Our customs agent is in Basel.
Should I put Basel into the sat-nav?
Yeah,
So I've got about as much of a clue as you two about where I'm going. Well, look where we are. We're in a village in the middle of Switzerland somewhere, and...
And you don't know your way to Basel, which is disappointing.
I'm sacked.
Customs agents still lie at the heart of the import-export business for trade to and from non-EU countries. But because we haven't needed them for trading within the EU, the number of them in the UK has drastically reduced, leading to a possible shortfall of several thousand brokers. We arrive at our customs agent in Basel, which, remember, is playing the part of Dover.
Hi, Tommy.
Hello, nice to meet you.
I'm Helen. This is
Hi, Helen.
Peter,
Hi,
and
Peter.
this is
Peter.
Ciaran.
Nice to meet you.
And Ciaran.
Hi, Tommy. How you doing? Nice to meet you. Very well. How are you doing?
And right away it seems that our paperwork is not in order.
So this is our invoice. What have you got here apart from that?
Yeah, what it is, it's what we had to do is we had to actually get in contact with that company. It's surely a very professional company, but in actual fact, we've noticed that the paperwork is not 100% correct.
What sort of thing has to be on it to make sure that it will tick all the boxes for export?
Yeah, what we need is, we need obviously a value of the goods. We need, in actual fact, a tariff heading, which was not completed on there, for example. We had to ask our customs brokers here in-house to actually get us a tariff heading for that exhaust. And we were also actually missing the weight.
If there's problems on this pro forma invoice, this means I'm going to be delayed when collecting my documents because you can't process them. If everything's missing off of there, I could be stuck on the border for 2 or 3 hours.
In the European Union, you can ship goods around without any paperwork now, frictionless. And but the knowledge has gone, since 25 years. A lot of companies, they are not producing proper paperwork for customs, and that's potentially a huge problem when you have to start doing customs entries again in Dover.
Tommy tells us that in his experience, about 20% of all paperwork has errors.
Now we go and do the physical customs clearance electronically. And Michael Blocking, he's the export controller. He will be doing that on screen online.
Okay, so this is the import desk that Tommy's just been telling us. Now that green file there, you can see it bound up with a rubber band, that is for one truck. It's all the individual consignments that have come in from the UK. This is import documentation, though, so this is under Swiss rules rather than EU ones, is that right?
That's on the Swiss customs law, the import entries, yes.
What do you make of all this, Peter?
I think we've been told a lot of lies. I don't think anybody in government actually understands the nitty-gritty of the complexities of getting goods from A to B.
Before you came and saw this for yourself, did you think the same, or did you think it was all fine and it would be okay?
I'd been told it was all fine. A number of people in government have pronounced and said, yes, it's all going to be fine. Unless exporters in the UK are up to speed by the end of March, we're going to be in a right mess. It's changed my view drastically, yes.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hand this over now to Ciaran. Hi, Ciaran. We've finished your paperwork. That's the transit document.
Cheers, Tommy.
You have to, don't forget to scan it at the border.
At the border, yep.
You have to scan it by the Swiss and the
Germans.
And the German authorities, yeah.
Yep.
And that's just the commercial invoices. We did you a copy as well.
Yep, no worries.
Just to hand this over in on clearance in Dover. If you have a problem, you give me a ring and I speak to Swiss Customs.
Yeah?
Okay.
Sure.
No worries, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, cheers, Tommy.
Have a safe trip, eh? Cheers,
very
bye-bye.
Nice to meet you. Thanks. Bye. Right, we good to go?
With a complete set of paperwork, it's just a short drive to the Swiss-German border.
I never realised the error percentage was so high for documents, especially...
That was something you picked up on as well, wasn't it? Was it 20% he thought?
He said about 20% had something that needs rectifying.
Which does seem very high.
And that's a particularly serious friction.
Export-import.
I have no idea.
Well,
yeah,
look,
probably.
you've got export-import, 200 metres.
Yeah, let's do that. Well, we're here. We've reached the Swiss-German border. Germany is, in fact, just a few metres that way. And the press team have been giving us some stats and facts about what goes on here. Now, Ciaran would usually be over there, where all the trucks that you can see kind of going through the border pretty smoothly.
But we want to get a closer view of what happens to trucks passing through the border, so we head into one of the checkpoint booths.
So you make here the Swiss check, and afterwards you make the German check. But you just have to scan in the paper.
Percentage of it.
What would you say then? There'll be people who watch this and say, look, you know, a few hours in a van with Ciaran and he's brainwashed you in Project Fear. As a Brexit supporter, what would you say?
I would say that I think we are still right to leave the European Union because we don't want a political union, but the free trade is important to us.
I've been on the other side over there for 5 hours because the cost of the goods have been questioned. It does happen. It's the luck of the draw. You'll be through in 20 minutes, you'll be through in 10 hours. You know, you don't know.
Politicians, I think, need to educate themselves more on how trade actually flows.
At this point, our analogy of an export from a post-Brexit Britain through Dover breaks down a little. Ciaran only needs transit documents at this border because Germany is not his final destination. But today, there are no queues. And once his documents are checked by Switzerland and Germany, he sails through. So what friction have we seen? Well, there's been a lot of paperwork, and that has taken time. We've also had to pay our customs agents around £150. And when Ciaran got back to Dover, the final destination for his goods from outside the EU, he was hauled in for what's known as a Route 1 paperwork inspection, which saw him delayed for over an hour.
So we've got our exhaust pipe across the border. Certainly one thing I've learned from this process has been how important customs agents are to importing and exporting for countries outside the EU. What we've also learnt is if the UK government truly wants frictionless trade after Brexit, well, potentially there's a long journey ahead.